This is Tathagata Chatterji, and welcome to this talk on urban planning in India. My talk is structured in 5 sections. First, I will give a brief introduction about the urbanization context and the challenges Indian cities are facing. Then I will sequentially go through the historical, legal, and the institutional framework within which contemporary urban planning systems are embedded. Then, finally, I will conclude by discussing the emerging trends and challenges. India is now going through a huge urban shift. The urban population of the country is expected to increase from 35% in 2022 to about 50% by 2047. Within this 25-year period, the absolute increase in urban population is over 300 million, which is larger than the population of many big countries in the world. And this, of course, has huge economic, environmental, and social implications. There are, of course, strong economic and demographic urban underpinnings behind this urbanization. Firstly, Indian economy is going through a structural change as the composition of the economy is shifting from the domination of agriculture to that of services, and to a lesser extent on manufacturing. The information technology services has become the dominant driver of the Indian economy for the past 3 decades. Also, the age profile of the population is going through a change. India now has the largest youth population in the world, and the median age group of the country, it's about 28 years. So, it is not a surprise that large number of youth are moving from their rural habitats to the cities in search of new opportunities. But of course, there are significant regional variations in population growth and urbanization. By and large, the southern and the western part of the country are more industrialized and more urbanized. On the other hand, population growth rate are highest in the north central part of the country. So there is a trigger behind this interstate migration where people are moving from economically sluggish regions to the more vibrant urban centers. Another key attribute of India's urban pattern is the domination of the big cities. There are 7 cities in the country which are about 10 million plus population, and there are about 60 another cities which has got 1 million plus population. So these are the places where most of the economic growth opportunities are concentrated. Urban India today presents a complex and contradictory picture. On the one hand, due to sustained economic growth over the past few decades, there is a huge urban middle class along with their consumerist aspirations. On the other hand, there is also a large concentration of the poor who has been pushed out of the rural economy due to decline in agriculture. However, for opportunities for the rural displaced migrants in the cities are only at the bottom tier of the informal economy. One of the consequences of high economic growth and middle class aspirations is a huge growth in the number of automobiles. All major Indian cities are now gridlocked with the traffic, which is also causing environmental degradation, particularly air pollution. Most people in Indian cities depend on the informal sector for their jobs and the shelter provisions. But unfortunately, these issues are seldom discussed in the planning processes. The formal sector is unable to absorb the population surge impacting the cities, and there are also contestations over the public spaces, whether it is the right for the traffic or for the pedestrians or for the people to earn their livelihood. The Indian city is now a contested urban space. Now, let me go through the timeline through which urban planning system has evolved in India. Although India had a great heritage of urban planning and design based on cosmic tradition, however, modern urban planning has its roots in the colonial administrative rules and regulations, as municipal governments started to get established from the 18th and the 19th centuries onwards. Broadly speaking, we can divide the urban planning process in India into three phases. First, from the 20th century to about the 1960s, the improvement trust were the main actors carrying out urban planning responsibilities. From the 1960s onwards till the 2000, it was the development authorities who were the lead institutional actors. From 2000 onwards, as the national government started providing greater funds for urban development, the roles of the private sector consultants has increased in the urban planning sphere very much. Contemporary spatial planning in India has its roots in the public health crisis of the 19th century. Insanitary conditions prevailed in Indian cities, and the spread of epidemics like plague and cholera sparked public criticism, and the need for planned development began to get emphasized. This was particularly so as the European and the Indian areas of the cities were marked by differing levels of civic amenities. So, in order to carry out planning tasks, city improvement trusts were set up first in Bombay in 1898 and then in Calcutta in 1911. Interestingly, even though both of these cities had municipal corporations, but from the very beginning, urban planning was seen as a technocratic activity and was kept outside the municipal corporations so as to keep them outside the pulls and pressures of day-to-day civic administration, so that the planning can take a long-range view. In early 20th century, planning indeed became a tool for colonial modernity. The Calcutta Improvement Trust Charter, for example, had provisions for planning with 20-year horizon, opening up of congested areas to provide green spaces, straighten up road alignments, altering street patterns, carrying out urban renewal of the dilapidated areas, acquiring new land for planned urban development. However, city planning was dominated by an engineering approach. Although Sir Patrick Geddes was present in India at that time and provided alternative solutions based on minimal alterations to the existing settlement patterns and providing small neighborhood scale green spaces, but his opinions were overlooked. Planning for New Delhi as the imperial capital city After the shifting of the capital from Calcutta in 1912 was another significant milestone in the Indian planning system. The city layout was based on hexagonal grid. Urban design was inspired by the City Beautiful movement. The New Delhi plan for the first time implemented zoning in a big way. The zoning reflected the administrative hierarchy so that people of higher administrative levels can be in one category of zone, people of the lower administrative category would be in another zone, like that. But by and large, the New Delhi plan um, propagated low density urban development with independent houses with garden spaces. After independence, the first significant planning intervention was the planning for Chandigarh as a new capital city for Punjab. The design of Chandigarh was based on modernist principles and rational planning. Master plan development was based on neighborhood concept with clear land use segregation and zoning guidelines. The road layouts provided for hierarchy of roads of different widths and carrying capacities, but by and large favored an automobile-centric mobility pattern for the city. In the immediate post-colonial period, planning was seen as a key tool for nation building. At the national level, it is the 5-year economic plan which were the main mode of the distribution of the resources. It focused on balanced regional development and public sector-led industrialization. This led to growth of several industrial townships such as Durgapur, Rourkela, Bhilai, etc. These were broadly inspired by the Garden City principle to provide good living environment to the people working in the industry. However, these industrial townships are also symbolic of enclave urbanism, as they are disconnected from the surroundings and continue to be governed by different institutional entities. This was also the time when master planning started for the big cities, which are essentially statutory plans for land use control and was anchored by the city development authorities. The Delhi master plan was a pioneer in this. It was a statutory plan under the Delhi Development Act of 1957. Institutionally, it was piloted by Delhi Improvement Trust, which was converted into Delhi Development Authority. It was essentially a 20-year physical plan for a low-rise city with polynodal urban structure, which advocated development of satellite townships around Delhi so as to reduce population pressure on the core part of the city. However, by the time the second master plan, 1981-2001, it became apparent that it is impractical to plan Indian cities based on strict zoning guidelines. Due to rapid urbanization and flows of migrants, planned urban spaces and infrastructure quickly got overwhelmed. And the informal sector growth started happening all over the city. The delay in notification of the second master plan also impacted its implementation. From the third master plan onwards, there has been greater emphasis on transit-oriented development, mixed land use, and environmental sustainability issues. As the economy of India started to get liberalized, since the mid 1980s, the government of India started to paying greater focus on the urban sector issues. A significant step in this regard was the formation of the National Commission on Urbanization in 1986, which provided a roadmap for urban development and advocated for empowering the city governments for more people centric planning, moving the urban planning function from the development authorities to the municipal corporations. Subsequently, um, there was a constitutional reform in 1992 which sought to recognize the municipal governments officially as the third tier of the Indian federal system and entrusted it with planning responsibilities. Then, from 2005 onwards, the government of India had launched several major urban centric schemes, which is also trying to reform the urban center as well as its institutional context. Urban development is a state subject under the Indian Constitution. Every state has got a Town and Country Planning Act. There are also municipal acts. These are the two major guiding documents which influence planning. The 74th Constitution Amendment Act of 1992 explicitly recognized municipal governments as the third tier in the administrative hierarchy and sought to define its roles and responsibility through decentralization of administrative and financial functions. These included the transfer of urban planning functions from the development authorities to the municipal bodies. However, implementation of these reforms are still incomplete and varies from state to state. In most cases, state governments are reluctant to part with the planning power, and the planning functions still continue to be held by the development authorities, which are parastatal organizations functioning directly under the state governments. The federal funding schemes have also influenced urban planning systems in India very significantly over the past 2 decades, as they are linked to provision of funds for infrastructure development. The JNNURM scheme, which was in vogue from 2005 to 14, suggested preparation of city development plans and take a more strategic approach towards urban planning instead of the statutory land use centric master plans alone. Subsequently, Amrut project, which started from 2015 onwards, had emphasized on service level improvement plans focusing on infrastructure delivery services, particularly water and waste management. There is also a thrust towards application of digital technologies and GIS-based master planning. The Smart City scheme, which was in vogue from 2015 to 25, emphasized on area-based urban renewal and tactical urbanism. Along with this had led to setting up of integrated command and control centers for managing urban services in all 100 cities in which the smart cities are program is in vogue. But one aspect of the smart cities plan is that this also very substantially increase the roles of the consultants in the planning processes. The institutional framework in urban planning is three-tiered due to strong involvement of the national government in urban planning issues. At the apex is the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs of the national government, which anchors all the central government funded schemes. Then, in every state, there is a state Ministry of Urban Development. At the city level, on the other hand, we see multiplicity of authorities and institutional fragmentation. Although the municipal governments has got some amount of planning functions like local area plans or the service level improvement plans under the Amrut, but overall planning responsibility in many cases are still with the development authorities which function under the state governments. And the smart city plans are carried out by the special purpose vehicle or smart city companies where the plans are developed by the consulting companies. This institutional arrangement for planning is of course extremely complicated when it comes to metropolitan regions. Here, for example, is the plan for the Calcutta metropolitan area, where there is a Calcutta Metropolitan Development Authority, which is the main planning agency, but the metropolitan region includes 3 municipal corporations, 38 municipal council areas, and 22 different rural council areas. The core part of the city, that is the Calcutta Municipal Corporation area, which has got a population of 4.5 million, and covers about 1/10 of the overall metropolitan area, does not have much of the planning responsibility, which is handled at the metropolitan level by the Calcutta Metropolitan Development Authority. Now, to sum up, planning system in India includes a variety of plans, from long-range perspective plans for with 20 to 30 years horizon to plans which are shorter in duration, like 5 year or 10 years, like the local area plans. Also, there are strategic and sectoral plans. However, with too many different types of plans, what has become problematic is how do you harmonize the different time frames, different thrust areas, and different timelines. Planning in India, by and large, suffers from several systemic deficiencies. First, there are legal and institutional overlaps. There are inadequate empowerment of the municipal governments. Also, there are role conflicts. Planning system continues to be dominated by the parastatal bodies, which are technocratic entities with limited accountability and they are also facing capacity challenges. The municipal governments has got limited authority. Moreover, 65% of India's 7,900 odd urban settlements do not have any master plans at all. The plans which are prepared for with 20 to 25-year horizon are seldom updated at regular intervals. Plan preparation also suffers from data inadequacy. Another key problem area is inadequate alignment between the planning horizon and the governmental tenure and the financing schemes. So the plans are prepared for a longer duration, but the governments are for 5 years. So there is a conflict between the government's priority, which is more short-term, versus the plan needs, which are more long-term. There are also very significant delays in release of notifying the plans and release of funds as approved for under the infrastructure needs discussed under the planning. Now, city development plans and the sectoral development plans, which had been propagated by the national government's funding programs, are essentially project oriented and has got a shorter time frame, which often prepared in a hurry to access the project funds. However, they are not necessarily always very well linked with the overarching master plans. They are target oriented plans but not process oriented, which remains a major problem area. Another big issue is the lack of inclusion of the informal sector, because the largest segment of the population in Indian cities depend on the informal sector jobs for their livelihoods, but they are not adequately incorporated within the plan structures. That is why most Indian cities has large numbers of people living in the slums, especially in the metro cities where, like Mumbai and Calcutta, where the slum populations are over between to 30 to 40% of the overall city population. Citizen participation is also suffering from deficits as the planning continues to be top down, and community engagements also, they are part and parcel of the planning process, but in most cases it is inadequate and done in a short time. Planning system is also facing human resource capacity challenges. The shortage of urban planners and also limited financial and technical resources is a major hindrance. The number of accredited urban planners in India per 100,000 population is only 0.38, whereas in case of Nigeria, it is 1.44. And in case of Britain, it is 38. Moreover, there are big vacancies in the sanctioned urban planning posts. More than 42% urban planner posts are lying vacant, as the government, instead of filling up the vacant urban positions, is more inclined towards outsourcing planning tasks to the consultants. There is also a big need to strengthen planning education. Inadequate attention is there towards the social, economic, and the political aspects in planning education, which is by and large oriented towards design and technocratic solutions, and to some extent on application of digital technology like GIS. However, there is lack of focus towards plan implementation, about financing, about resource mobilization, about the negotiations and stakeholder engagements. So these aspects do not get adequate coverage in the planning course curriculums. There are also very large overlaps between the undergraduate and the postgraduate courses. On the other hand, urban management and the governance skills, which are very necessary in running the cities, has not received adequate attention in the planning systems. So this is how it is. Thank you for your attention. It was a pleasure talking about the urban planning system in India. And here are my contact informations. Thank you once again.